Mensuri Gakusei, thank you for tuning in to Mizuchi Dojo Radio, a weekly podcast featuring discussions between the best martial artists in Western New York on a variety of martial arts concepts. I'm your host, Bill Reynolds, and joining me today are these panelists. We have Brandon Zerwinski, trained since 2009, second Q in Krav Maga. We also have with us Rob Guida, trained since 2010, second degree black belt in Kenpo Karate. And we have Mr. Chris Poette, the only Mr. I apparently gave that title to, trained since 1990, sixth degree black belt in Bushido Kai.
He's the oldest.
Yes, you can find this information about our panelists and more in our show notes. This episode, can you accommodate for serious health issues in training and still expect that that person or yourself will be able to attain a black belt and higher? See, I know that this is something I think was inspired by Rob, but you let off on another episode. So, well, how about this? We'll go with Chris Hajime.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Previously I said, I think martial arts is a lot about personal growth. And I think a person that it trains a particular martial arts, and if there may be some limitations, obviously, to the person's health or so, but I think a black belt could be achieved.
All right. Rob, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree mostly. I think it has to do with what the goal is of the person. Like if they want to be a tournament fighter, like we have to have a discussion. You have issues. If they want to do personal growth and they want to earn a black belt because they always want to do that, okay, we could do that. Like that's different. If you want to do some crouching tiger, hidden dragon stuff and jump on trees and go from house to house on rooftops, like that's passed them by.
Yeah, to be
So
fair, only
so
one out of 100 students of mine can do that.
exactly, you're better ratio than me. It's for me, it's 1 out of 1,000.
Mm.
But I think I've had a lot of students go through the years, and they all have different reasons of why they joined the school. Hey, one lady, which I loved immensely, and Chris knows what I'm talking about, who really only took karate to get away from her husband and her kid
Mm.
for like 3 hours a week. Like she needed a break. And she was fantastic, not as a martial artist, but just great in having class. She was always there. She never skipped. She trained hard, and she was never going to be good. Nobody cared. It wasn't the point, right? She got better, and she was better the whole time. And so I think it depends upon the person and what they're really looking for. And so yeah, you could train through personal injuries, I mean, I was teaching and training from a chair for a long times. I couldn't walk, and it just you do what you got to do, but you have to have the right goal in mind.
Hmm.
If you see what I'm saying, you have to have a little bit of understanding of what you're trying to do.
Okay, good point. Brandon, opening thoughts.
Well, I love that you saved this topic for HR. So, as you know, with the ADA, reasonable accommodations pertaining to doing the job with or without those reasonable accommodations. No, actually, I'm pretty aligned with what Rob said. At the end of the day, not always. It depends on what you're there for. If the school is a competitive boxing gym or a Taekwondo school that only does tournaments or sport, whatever the art is. It's not gonna really benefit anybody for you to be there and try to go in if you have a major debilitating thing that the other competitors don't. That being said, self-defense, absolutely. Come on in. Let's figure out, what you can do, what you can't do. Same for just as Rob said, self-enrichment, learning the system. Absolutely, we can work with that. It just depends on what kind. As we've talked about before, martial arts isn't just one thing anymore. So yes, unless no, is the short answer.
Yes, until it's no. All right. Yeah, I'll throw one more monkey wrench in here. I Yeah, I think that you all have made some really good points with regard to the idea that as someone who would be considering training somebody or training with someone, who has some sort of either acute or chronic disability, uh, physically, maybe even mentally, there can be accommodations made. Uh, it just depends on what your goal is and how realistic you are about attaining it, and how that'll look. But I think the other part I want you, the panelists, to consider is this perspective on can you train when somebody has some sort of acute or chronic physical health ailment. I think I think about it from the student side who is a really like fierce and dedicated student and now has developed some sort of physical limitation. They now have knee problems. They now have back problems, neck problems, and their doctor is telling them to, hey, dial it back, or I don't even think you should be training anymore. And where I think, as we were just saying, the other instructors could say, "Oh, no, no, we can work with you. We'll figure out how we can do this." I think about myself. I don't know about you guys have ever been in this situation, but I've injured myself in various ways through the decades, and when I was told, oh, "Okay, you're approved to return to training," I didn't go in light, and I would pay for it. I was not very good at dialing back and being respectful. And certainly now that when I have somebody come in, that's what I guess I think about is like, well, if you're also willing to respect your body's current limitation, which may be permanent, um, and train respectfully to that, I am happy to train you too. But is it really possible? Maybe. I guess it's a person to person thing. But I just wanted you guys to have that into your thoughts as well. All right, let's open this up to broader discussion. Um, Anybody have any like I guess want to even answer that one? Yes, Brandon.
Yeah, so I'm gonna HR this again. There's a reason you have the student sign waivers. It's definitely yes. As Bill, as you know, when I was your student, yeah, there were sometimes I'd just be stupid. I'd have knee pain, but I'd just guff through it and then suffer for it in the next few weeks. Same for the exercise induced asthma I had. I mean, how many years was it that other students were staring at me as I looked on the verge of death and then was like, okay, no, I can continue the kata. And actually addressing those issues is huge, and then respecting, understanding your body. Some people are dumb like me, other people are smarter and figure it out faster. But again, I do believe, I mean, one, to protect yourselves. Again, we are in the age where they're paying you, so you have the waivers to say, hey, listen, you're here because you want to be. You're taking this on yourself, and we have an understanding here. If I tell you you shouldn't, you don't. If I push you past that, then hey, maybe I'm in trouble. But um, it really boils down to what you're learning. Again, if you're going to a competitive gym and you have a chronic issue that can interfere and it can be a danger to yourself or others, then no, there's in HR there's reasonable accommodation, and then there's undue burden, and that condition can affect the other person too. um, so again, learning self-defense, absolutely, come in, we will figure out what you need to watch out for yourself to master yourself. Same for self-enrichment or arts or just performance. But if you're looking for something highly competitive, if you're having epileptic fits, please, for the love of everything, don't try out for the NFL. It's there's things that you should not do, and there's things that you can find an alternative, right? Um, so it's within reason at the end of the day.
Stunned silence.
Oh. We're
Thank you,
waiting for you to
thank
say
you.
something
I
like,
have that effect.
"Wow,
Yeah.
what do you think?" Chris, thoughts?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think we have to almost separate a little bit. Like we all run schools. Chris, you run a school. I mean, like we all run schools. So I think we have to separate a little bit. Like the fear of getting sued for the sake of the discussion. Otherwise, I think it goes down a weird path, right? Like, just for the sake of the discussion, I think we have to worry about that too. Like if a doctor says you shouldn't do it, we should not be doing it with the student because you can talk about negligence and a doctor told you not to do it and you relayed that message to an instructor and you still did it. I think there's some negligence in there that the discussion could get complicated. That being said, you know, I think, Brandon's right. Like we should be able to work with whatever the student wants to do to provide them what they want within reason. I mean, I taught an autistic kid. He wasn't autistic. He was shaken as a baby. He wasn't really autistic. I taught him for about 6 years, and I got him from running around the room and screaming to like be sitting in a spot and throwing a kick, and that was success. I mean, that was what he could do, you know. So that was a realistic conversation with the parents and what we could and couldn't accomplish. And I think that's really important. Like the guy who comes in with knee problems, well, he's not doing spinning jump kicks. Why would we expect him to do that? Um, so we got to be careful though. Like when doctors say they shouldn't do something, I know we have waivers, but man, that paper only works so much.
Oh yeah,
So,
right. Yeah,
yeah, I
it's
mean,
a
so that's
very
why,
important thing. I don't even know
yeah,
if you want to have a separate agreement with that person just to clarify what we're dealing with here, and they're doing this of their free will and accord, and
you'd
uh,
almost, it's sad to say, but you'd almost have to. If someone came in with truly like limitations, they still wanted to do it.
mm,
Like you'd almost have to have that, right? Like a lawyer sign, like I mean, I hate to say it, do it, but how else are we protected as school owners?
mm.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to these laws, my knowledge when it comes to litigation isn't as great as labor law, but you are signing a contract, and that's why you all have contracts of some form, not just to say, hey, I'd prefer you stay out the whole year and pay, but also, hey, listen, this is not an essential activity. This is extreme fitness in one way or another. I mean, good Lord, has anybody ever seen Bill's warm-ups?
Mm.
No, wait, Rob's here. You two could compete, and depending on the person, if they're not prepared, and you both know, do it within your own pace, do it within what you can do. But if that person misunderstands, you've got the waiver. It's to keep people honest. And also, I agree with Rob. There's a qualitative factor, not just the business sense, but what can this person actually learn? If they're, I love that Into the Borderlands, Stephen Lang beating the crap out of people while in a wheelchair looks cool as heck. But, you know, can we modify the curriculum for that person? Somebody in one of my Krav Maga schools had one arm. I think it was just a fetal condition. They only had the one, and the other was underdeveloped. Could still do stuff. He just couldn't do the exchanging punches. He'd double up on that cross or that jab. That one's a little easier to get around. Somebody missing a leg. Okay, do they have a prosthetic, or are they wheelchair bound, or are they on a crutch? Can we modify self-defense for that? It gets interesting in some ways. And it's not something I think that should stop modern martial arts by any stretch. But me, I'm kind of an elitist for self-defense and for like the martial part of it over the sporty part. The sporty part will separate. You have to qualify for the sporty part. And genuinely, a qualified worker in labor law with or without reasonable accommodations. Reasonable can't be undue. It can't be, oh well, the other guy has to tie up his leg. It's against the activity. So it just depends on what you're doing, and the liability really does. I mean, that's part of why you have those contracts. When I was at another Krav Maga school, somebody actually in the third level, they only do first three levels. I know he said second Q, but basically I was in the advanced and not the master level. Um, Somebody in that master level course had a heart attack and ended up passing away.
Mm.
Um, you know, it happened. Do I think the school was liable? Well, no. I mean, that person came of their own volition and they did everything they could. The EMS were there. But that person unfortunately had a heart attack during the routines and died.
Mm.
Um, we could say that person had an underlying issue, sure, but they were there because they wanted to be,
Mm.
and it's a tragedy that that person died.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't put that on the teachers.
Mm.
Unless they were, if they were like, hey, don't drink for 3 days and then maybe, fight five people at once. Okay, it's on the trainers, but that's psycho stuff, or what they were
Right,
doing,
right.
I saw. So
Right. And I think that's in this case I don't maybe but we don't know here, and I guess I wouldn't share whether the person knew they had a pre-existing condition, some sort of AFib or coronary
also
artery
that,
disease or
yeah.
something that you could say, okay, this is consult with your physician. I know that like certainly generally, although it's probably in my documentation. Please consult with your personal physician before proceeding with this more heavy duty type of training. Um, but the one thing I was thinking about too while you were talking is that there's another element in here that I don't think we really touched yet. But before I touch on it myself, Chris, any thoughts so far on what we've discussed?
Oh, it's funny. I mean, we were talking about all these ways of like um, training stuff like that. It's. I just think that like each school um, trains differently. Like I remember back in the years when I used to like train in Taekwondo, there was so many kicks, and it was just so tired of doing some kicks. It just and then but where I train right now, I mean, we do so many throws to the ground. It just the way that your body is, right? I mean, you know, it's different when after I throw you down to the ground 5 times, and the sixth time you get up very slowly because you're so physically just you know uh,
Beaten.
tired from getting up all these times. It's just a different way of training. So, um, but yeah, no, that was the only thing that really came to mind. I was just thinking about all the different ways that you train.
Then the other perspective I wanted to throw in here for your guys' opinion was in addition to one, as an instructor, are you willing and able to accommodate somebody who has some sort of physical limitation? And it sounds like everybody here is resoundingly yes. In fact, Brandon suggests that we almost have an obligation to do so in a way, although it's not like employment; it is voluntary. But and then I threw out there on the reverse side, what about the student who somehow has concerns about their ability to um, train in such a way to respect that limitation that they currently have or maybe will always have. Um, I don't know if anybody really gave a good answer to that one, from what I heard, but I'll throw out this third one and you guys can consider if you had a response to how you help somebody dial it back too and still feel like they're gonna get the training because I think that's the underlying piece here is that somebody could say, well, what if I'm not doing the full curriculum the way everybody else is doing? Am I really earning the same belt or am I earning a special education belt now? Um, and then, but the third one to consider too is that the person who has the limitation might be concerned that the limitations that are being placed upon their training will bleed out onto all the other trainees with them, and that somehow by them training with them, they are holding people back. They're somehow um, negatively impacting everybody else's training. So, any thoughts not only on the second point, which I wasn't sure everybody had a chance to really address, as well as this other point?
Yeah, so there's definitely a nuance there, and I mean, let's be real. I'm kind of the crazy hermit here. Yeah, I'm good at martial arts, but I don't have a school of my own. But I'll say pretty easily the nuance here is on all of those issues, the decider is duress, right? So if let's say in that case with that person who suffered a heart attack, if they were like, I don't feel so good, and the instructor, like an idiot, was like, no, you keep pushing, be a man or whatever, and they didn't even sing the song from Mulan, which is just a shame.
Right.
Then that
What a
person,
song to die to in a heart
what a
attack.
song, yeah, I mean, if I had to go, but if they were pushing that person, I don't think that waiver would protect them. Same for the student, right? If the instructor and Bill and Rob, I've had both of you teaching me before, and you've both been good. Like, well, if you don't feel comfortable, don't do it. And if you say that, if you're like, hey, do you need to take a break? Are your knees hurting? Are you having a hard time breathing? If I keep going, even though you're trying to give me that out, I mean, again, that you did your due diligence. Um, Now the student, I mean, when it comes to the thought of like, am I holding the other students back? I've seen good versions and bad versions. I've seen somebody stop the whole class and do it the way just so that that student could get, yeah, okay, I get it, bleeding heart, but not the best. I've also seen other people do, okay, this is it. And then as the other students are training, the instructor comes down to that person like, okay, I understand that that might be something that might be difficult for you. What I want you to do is come over here. Let me show you a slightly different way to get that same thing done, and try to work that through. Does that hurt? Does that, if you do that, it'll be the same thing and it'll help you move into the next step we're about to do. I've seen both versions. The second one is the winner there, in my opinion. The first one is very much like, okay, everybody do it as though you are, no offense to the person with a disability, but at a disadvantage. Whereas the first one is, here's how you teach it, or here's how you do it to your best, class. Hey, you come here. There's no offense to you, but here's how you do it to your best with what you've got. You know, it's just realistic. And honestly, I think it respects the person more. I've never met a disabled person who's like, no, treat it like I don't have one. They're just like, I just want to be treated normal. It's fine. I have it. It exists, but don't freak out over it. So if you're addressing it in a surgical, clinical way, like, hey, this is how we're going to get past it, I would be shocked unless that person was fishing for offense, to be offended.
But Rob, you look like you had a reaction over there.
No, I mean, I think one of the things that we haven't really talked about, but also plays into it is like um we're not talking about grading, but in a sense it kind of plays into it a little bit. Like I have changed over the years. My teacher, Mrs. C, she laid me out once at how I was doing grading years ago because I was just doing it wrong and I didn't know any better. And
Wait, you said she laid you out. She like punched
oh
you
my
so
God,
hard you
yeah,
got knocked down?
she laid into me.
She
What's
said,
that?
"Don't grade people that way."
Oh
Boom.
no, she laid into me. She
Oh,
goes,
laid
I
into
never
you.
want to see you ever
Okay.
do that again. I mean, it was about as hard as I've ever been yelled at by someone outside the military.
She
Oh
hit him with a
boy.
truck. It was terrible.
It was pretty shocking. I thought you'd be happy. I was all excited. But essentially like I look at it completely differently now. And I try to impart this on everybody. And it's a sliding scale. I don't expect Chris to be able to do his black belt test the same way that I expect somebody who's 20 to be able to do their black belt test. Like it's different. I don't expect somebody who's in their 40s who just picked up Kenpo to be able to do the same type of black belt test that Chris did, who's been touching studying martial arts for 40 years. Like they're different. And if we get in this notion that we have to treat everybody the same, well, then you have this problem with the person who can't do it for whatever reason. And when we realize it's not the same, we're all different, then you can when you realize the sliding scale, like I don't care where you are right now. I care where you came from and I care where you're going. The test is just a progress report to move on to more material. And so you're better than where you were. So even though you have a disability or you're limited in some way, you're still better than where you were. You still deserve whatever rank or whatever the test is. And I think it's hard to impart that on students sometimes. That you can't compare yourself to them. You got to compare yourself to you. I think that's the hardest part. And if you could take videos, like I've talked about this before, if you could take a video of somebody when they came in as a white belt, I think Chris, you and I think we've talked about this.
Yeah,
And you take a
yeah.
video of them as a white belt, take a video of them as a yellow belt, doing say the same form or the same whatever, and then a video as a purple belt. Like they'll see the progress, but there's no way they see it as they're living it. And so I think imparting that on everybody that it's a sliding scale and them understanding it is the key. Um, and then you get the question, of course, well, we're both testing for brown belt. Why is he doing form four and I don't have to? I'm like, well, because it's a sliding scale. That's why. Because you can't do it.
I think
For example.
that's a great point. And it falls again, black belt does not, life's not an anime. Just because you're a black belt doesn't mean you're so much stronger and mightier than everyone else. It means you you did all the stuff that is on those levels. It's just like the wall in your school, Rob. Like they got all the way to that point. you know.
Yeah.
And same for Bill's cues. Like they got to that point, or I assume for Bushido Kai as well, Chris.
Right.
Same thing. They got through it. And like you said, it's a sliding scale. Did they meet the requirements? Great. Okay, they didn't do a triple sow cow in the air before throwing that, tornado, hook kick, but they still did the spinning hook kick. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess maybe even to this point where I'm thinking about somebody who, let's say they are wheelchair bound. To Chris's, or I should say Rob's point here, well, they are not going to be able to demonstrate a wheel throw. They're just not. They cannot do that. So does that mean they could never progress? And I think, sort of maybe along your lines, your sliding scale, you judge each student for what you feel they potentially capable of within the curriculum. And if they can, and you want them to demonstrate that within what you know they're capable of. And if you know, okay, you're 50 years old, you are not 18. I'm not expecting the same level of flexibility or speed. And you don't have to because that's not within your potential. Can you still attain the same belt level? Yes, of course you can. If you go rise to your potential, that's I think to me like when we talked to the other episode about sports versus martial arts, the idea of rising to your potential, I feel like is almost unique to martial arts. Oh, nice. I got a warning on this one. We've got 10 minutes left if we want it. Okay.
No sudden death today.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Like another unfortunate episode. But this altogether, I will say this has been a pretty good experiment in non-gathered recording of an episode. So I appreciate you guys trying out this experiment. Uh, but before I guess with that last 10 minutes, final thoughts about helping or working with somebody who has a genuine limitation that let's say I had a youth student once who apparently had some sort of herniation uh, in actually in their intestinal area versus lower, which was something I was more used to, and there was concerns about it. And so, how do we, adjust the training so that way they can feel safe and comfortable, but also feel like they're training and they're going to progress and be eligible for promotion, and that they're not going to hold other people back in that process. That somehow by them being able to do less things, that somehow other people aren't going to be able to do more. Final thoughts.
I guess the only final thought I have is something you said earlier, Bill, about one of your students or something. When they do have a physical limitation, you can't always see them, and it is important that there is some type of physical, visual representation, whatever that is, so that the mistake isn't made.
Yeah, I went to a
And
tournament or something. And they had like stickers or something on the gis at this tournament. Like I think it was to basically indicate this is a crappy shoulder or something like that.
something in one sense you don't want to single them out and you don't want to like point out the fact there's a problem. In the other sense, it's just safety. It's like if I don't know that I don't know if I don't know that your left elbow is hyperextended, then how am I supposed to know not to do an armbar? And so it is important in a way that I think if you do have students that have some type of physical limitation, it kind of has to be in a way obvious to everybody,
Mm,
whether it's a brace or a you know something that's obvious. Otherwise, you run the risk of making a mistake. Just a normal life.
yeah, I think
And
it like
and and the, and the last thing I'll finish with is like we didn't talk about it, but there's a difference between being hurt and being injured.
Right.
mm,
And like we all as instructors have, we have to be careful because if they're injured, it's different than if they're just hurt. If they're hurt, we just continue to go. If they're injured, it's different. And so that's just something to keep thinking about.
I am sad to say that I just thought of this, but another good thing to do is to if somebody does have those needs, their training partners also need to be aware of it. So that is
no,
the
definitely.
one. Yeah, that is the one other onus I would say is on the instructor and the trainee to tell them, hey, listen, I mean, if they're missing an arm, okay, kind of obvious. But if it's something like Rob said, a little harder to see, mention it. But yeah, final thoughts are still, it's just as good for somebody with a disability to learn martial art as somebody without, but it needs to be modified, and that's a realistic thing, and nobody should be ashamed of that.
Chris, final thoughts.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that Robert brought up something about actually like identifying that you have like that you're hurt or injured. I do recall it. I think I had a broken finger or something like that, broken thumb, you know, and it was just about done healing, you know, so I had to splint off it. But I attended a seminar that I knew I was going to be very physical at the seminar, and I put the brace back on because I wanted my training partner to show that I had an injury, you know, because I didn't want him to, you know, to throw me around as much, I guess. So, but yeah, definitely showing that is a good thing to do.
Yeah, that was actually something I was talking with Rob off air about. I have a student who identified a neck injury or neck condition, and I was and suggesting to them they're asking if they could still train, which sort of inspired this episode. And I said, well, I think one thing we're going to need to do is I'm going to need you to wear sort of like a choker or a scarf, something that basically not only is visual reminder to your training partners, but to you that you can feel this thing on your neck and remind you to, you know, don't mess around with your own neck, let alone other people messing around with it.
Under
It's almost
5
worse,
minutes.
isn't it? Like you forget. Like in the moment, you forget you're hurt.
Right.
Like you don't remember. I remember when my back was crazy. I'd forget that my back was crazy, and I start doing, you know, movements, and I'm like, oh, don't do that again. Like I gotta sit down now. You just
Adrenaline,
forget.
baby.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I like recommend, you know, if you need a brace, wear the brace because the brace
Yeah.
will remind you why you have a brace on.
Yeah.
It's almost like doctors know what's up, you know.
Yeah, I know, weird, right?
Weird.
Any other thoughts? All right, spectacular, gentlemen. Well, to that I will say yame. And thank you, panelists. Thank you, listeners, for your attention. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, and you can share them to us on our threads at Mizuchi_dojo, or you can email us at mizuchi.dojo.hanbu@gmail.com. Also, please consider supporting this podcast by subscribing via our Patreon. Our $1-a-month subscribers will not only help keep this podcast in the air, but you can also vote on what topic you want the panel to discuss in the next recording session. Higher contributors can have their feedback read on the air, and even higher contributors can get a regular shout out to the martial arts school of their choice. You can find out more about this in our show notes as well as on our Patreon page. Mata Yasai.